your host, Effie Pilarino, and today I am traveling east and connecting to one of my beloved countries, India. And I have a special guest today, a new regulator, Joseph Joshy, who is the CTO of a new regulatory body, the IFSCA, and we will be discussing its special position and its mission. And I'm really delighted, and I'd like to welcome you first, Joseph.
Thank you, Effie. Thank you so much for having me here. Always a pleasure and privilege to be having a conversation with you.
It's my privilege too. Let's start with the traditional, your background. Have you always been working in the financial industry? I guess your background is definitely more technical, as you are the CTO. Tell us briefly how the journey has been up to today.
Yeah, so I have an engineering background, and I joined an IT MNC much earlier in my career, and that took me places thanks to their clients. I was working out of US, Canada, Mexico City, to name a few countries. I spent a good 16 years there, and then I decided to move on, and I moved away from the industry. I thought I could do farming, but I ended up working with students, helping them build startups. That was like a good sabbatical for me. And then this was in 2016, I guess, when Dr. Raghuram Rajan, the then RBI governor, he had a plan of starting an IT subsidiary for the Reserve Bank of India. I had the opportunity to join that as one of the co-founder and to set it up from scratch. I was there for 5 years. So that was my immersion into the regulatory world, from technology to regulatory. But then again, there I had exposures of both ends, technology as well as regulatory. And then way back in 2021, I had this unique opportunity to work with IFSCA, which was a new regulator set up by the Ministry of Finance under an act of the Parliament. So it's like a startup regulator. So that's even more interesting. So that's where I jumped over here to play the full-time role at the regulator.
Wow, I mean, the stereotype of a professional journey in the regulatory industry is not supposed to be so exciting, but you've made it exciting, right? And it seems that you're very much in touch with the startup world, with the innovations and the trends, and we'll have the opportunity to talk about the fact that in the West, we do admire and look up to what India has done, especially from a FinTech angle, both with UPI and Aadhaar, and how that has grown a whole ecosystem. But let's discuss about the new regulatory body, the IFSCA. First of all, what does it stand for? And it is physically based in a specific area called, if I'm correct, the gift area, right? And tell us both what it stands for and what is the gift of the gift area.
Very nicely put. In fact, that's what our Honorable Prime Minister says too. It's a gift to India. Gift City is a gift to India. So the story goes like this. GIFT as it stands is Gujarat International Finance Tech City. That's how GIFT is expanded. And when this city came into play, there was a specific zone they created in that city called the IFSC.
An economic zone, that is.
Correct. That's a special economic zone. So as you would know, India's rupee is not fully convertible. So there are capital controls in the country, which restricts dollars coming in and out, all the things associated with it. So when they created this IFSC, the International Financial Service Center, they created a zone where the foreign currency can freely come and go. Freely convertible foreign currency can be the currency of business here. So virtually you have a zone in India where the rupee convertibility is not a challenge anymore. So that's how it started, right? And at that point in time, the four domestic sector regulators, namely the Reserve Bank of India for banking, the Securities Exchange Board of India for capital markets, the IRDAI, the insurance arm, and the PFRDA for the funds, they were the four regulators looking into the business in the IFSC. This progressed for a few years. So the IFSC came in around 2015. So around 2019, for the ease of doing business with all these four regulators in different parts of the country, except for RBI and SEBI being in Mumbai, the other one was in Hyderabad and the other one was in Delhi. The government of India, through an act of the parliament in 2019, created a new unified regulator, which is the authority for IFSC. So that's how International Financial Centers Authority, Services Centers Authority came in place, IFSCA. Now, this regulator had the powers of the four regulators. So the RBI Act and the related acts of the various regulators came into the IFSCA Act. That's how the IFSCA was born. So then, henceforth, if a bank has to be set up, the approval or the license was given by IFSCA instead of the Reserve Bank of India in this zone, the IFSC zone. Yeah. Similar for the capital markets and the insurance, reinsurance, and the funds. So that's how it started. But then they also made sure this zone is very competitive in terms of its tax regime. So essentially, what they did, the government of India, in one of the budgets, they ensured that 100% tax exemption is given here for 10 out of 15 years. They ensure there is no security transaction tax, no stamp duty, no goods and service tax, right? And so on and so forth. So there was a whole range of benefits given so that this jurisdiction is on par with any other international jurisdiction. So that's how this came in.
So there's a whole package of gifts that are possible. Where physically, where shall we sort of visualize this economic area being? Is it east, north, northwest, or northeast?
Yeah, so this is more from the west side of the country. It's in a state of Gujarat. The capital of Gujarat is Gandhinagar. So it is in the city of Gandhinagar, is where Gift City is located.
Okay. I mean, I always, when I go to Davos for the World Economic Forum, there's always a house of, not a house of India. There's different states that are very much obviously into startup and innovation and so on. So I always try to learn the different states and understand. So from my knowledge, as I'm honored to be part of the evaluation committee that the IFSCA has put together to give some, if you want, rewards to startups that want to come in, foreign startups in this region. Tell us a little bit about the mission of this framework that is about 1 year old, right?
Right. Before I jump into that, we need to understand the key motivation behind this International Financial Service Center, right? So if you really look at it, it was to bring the offshore back to the onshore, right? Because a lot of our capital and talent went to the offshore centers because of the rupee convertibility challenge, the capital controls. So they were brought back. They have to be brought back. That was one. The next was to bridge the, it's a bridge between the global capital and the domestic one, the perfect gateway for people to land in or to launch out kind of thing. And of course, we wanted to export financial services from this region to the regional and the global kind of a domain. Now, if you really look at it, as a new regulator, we have come up with a host of regulations, be it banking, capital markets, insurance, funds. It's a complete package because it's an ecosystem you're developing. And that's how we found that we need to create a regulatory framework for fintechs because that was a missing piece.
Yes.
So that's where the fintech entity framework was born. So that kind of is an overarching framework for both fintechs and techfins, as we put it.
Yeah.
Fintechs are the pure bloods, if you want to say, like they are directly are verticals associated with the banking, capital markets, and insurance, whereas techfins are our horizontals, which contribute a lot to this entire ecosystem. So examples could be a
Examples are what?
cybersecurity firm, cybersecurity firm, digital identity firm, regtechs. These are needed across banking, capital markets, insurance. So your green, sustainable tech, right? Your digital, your digital entities. I spoke about the distributed ledger technologies, the blockchain solutions. These are all like my tech fin. So your AI ML solutions for the BFSI segment, that could be my tech fin. So that's how we kind of looked at both aspects so that you have a comprehensive framework. Now, what we did was, in addition to making it broad-based, we borrowed the Silicon Valley's fail fast principle as well. So in my past life, I was in the Bay Area, and that's where the startup, fever caught me, right? So we wanted the regulatory framework to bake this idea in, and that's how the concept of sandboxes came in. Yep. So we have an innovation sandbox for the first level of innovation where somebody has an idea, they want to just put together the pieces. We could give them, market data to play with. They graduate from that, go to the regulatory sandbox, which only a regulator can have. So which essentially means you can have live data, live customers, live transactions, and we don't have a regulation. So I, as a regulator, could give you a dispensation or a relaxation from a regulation and let that innovation thrive. And then I have something called as the IORS, the Interoperable Regulatory Sandbox. This is essentially a fintech bridge between IFSCA and the 4 domestic sector regulators. So we are connected internally as well. This forms the perfect landing pad for foreign fintechs to come to IFSC, because once they land here, getting connected to the domestic fintech regulators is easy through this IORS, right? And the last one which we are trying to build is the overseas regulators referral mechanism. We recently signed a fintech cooperation agreement with MAS, Monetary Authority of Singapore.
Yeah.
And there are many more in the line. So which essentially means this also is a launch pad for the Indian fintechs who want to go global. So overall, you allow them to fail in the sandbox, pivot to the ones which are really good so that the market drives what they want. So that's how we have built this framework. In addition to that, to what you said on the committee and the grants, we felt we should also help the bootstrapped innovator with some small change. So for the first time in India, a financial sector regulator came up with an incentive scheme. So there are 6 different types of grants, right? From the fintech startup grant to a sandbox grant, to a proof of concept grant, for listing. And we also have something specific for green fintechs because green is an area which is very much in focus. And we also have a grant for the accelerators because we know one accelerator can spawn multiple fintechs and innovation. So that's how the grant scheme also came. So with this fintech entity framework, regulatory framework, and the grants, and all of these innovation, regulatory, and IORS and overseas regulators sandboxes, we have created a very compelling ecosystem here for the fintechs.
Great, amazing. I mean, this if you want, approach of building bridges, of collaborating with other regional regulators and hubs is really the way to go. And definitely it will show in terms of if you want a 5-year plan for India to really grow its own ecosystem and also benefit from all the innovations around the world. You mentioned, and I did see that MOU with the MAS. I mean, congratulations for that. Obviously, globally, the MAS and the FCA are 2 of the most innovative, progressive, especially in the FinTech area, regulators that we all look up to. But not only. There's so many other regulators and areas, but those two are sort of the top that we like to look up to them and see how they're approaching innovation globally. And I mean, in your case, in India's case, you have the human capital, right? And you have the technical knowledge with universities of high quality. So this bridge is more to bring back from the globe the know-how, or is it more focused on growing the local ecosystem, or both? How do you feel that is sort of moving ahead?
Right. So see, one thing, as I said before, is this is a unified regulator. So that itself is a big win for the fintech ecosystem, because typically fintechs get embedded. They start probably with wealth tech, and then they get into some embedded insurance, and then to do some lending, and before you know, they're a super app. So having a unified regulator who looks across the kind of spectrum, the domains, it becomes very easy for the fintech, because they need not kind of get confused as to, am I within the regulator's remit or not? If it's only a pure play banking regulator, then if you're talking about wealth or insurance, then probably it's out of their realms, right? So that is not a problem here. So the unified nature itself, kind of makes it very fintech friendly. That's one. Second, as I said, this jurisdiction already has more than 400 plus entities. So that itself is a market. This is the financial services center, right? International Financial Service Center. You have international banks, you have 2 international exchanges, you have brokers, insurers, reinsurers, the whole ecosystem is coming up. So that itself is a market. And then, as I said before, it's a perfect landing pad for foreign fintechs to come in to the country. And it's a launch pad for the domestic fintechs who want to go global. Because if you're servicing other jurisdictions, you can be here and try to look at it. But
Joseph, this is not a virtual economic area. It is actually a physical economic area that's already developed. You mentioned some facts and figures about the presence of financial institutions that are obviously core to any economic activity. What is new is the empowerment of these frameworks that we've already mentioned, be it in terms of incentives, tax incentives, or incentives of ease of setting up the business. Obviously, the rupee convertibility is a huge one. And then the sandbox environments that you mentioned, and the unified approach. That is all coming together. It's as if you've managed to pull these pieces together, and now we can benefit from the network effects of these ecosystems that you've created.
Absolutely. So it's, as you know, like India's domestic market itself is huge. And the way it's going, if you really look at it, the global south is actually emerging, right? So that's where the growth is going to be, both in terms of absolute growth or in percentage growth. Like you're talking about almost 2x times the absolute GDP growth than US and Europe put together in the global south. Over the next 5 years, probably the GDP growths here are about 4.24%. Versus 1.4% for US and Europe put together. So be it in absolute growth or on percentage basis, the global south is the area, and definitely India is a good market there we are talking about. So with that, and if you look at it, you also talked about the tech-enabled part. So way back in 2015, the Honorable Prime Minister, initiated the Startup India kind of a campaign or a program, an announcement. It was made on the of Independence Day, the August 15, 2015. That kind of became a revolution today, right? When we started to where we are today, the ministry, there is a Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT, they have recognized way back in 2022, close to about 84,240 startups in India. So that's the kind of growth which we have seen. And today probably is the third largest market behind, US and UK, with the number of FinTechs as well. So if you really look at the way the growth happened, all of it point to certain things like an India stack story, which really put things into perspective. A population which was internet savvy, more than 700, 800 million having internet access. So all of this came together to create that perfect cocktail of growth and glory. That's what I would say here.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, this is a huge opportunity and a wonderful story to be part of, and I'm sure that this will appeal to many startups and many other stakeholders in the innovation ecosystem. Can you tell us a little bit more about the cross-border collaborations that you envision?
Right. So we talked about the rupee convertibility challenge, and it becomes very easy for a country, for a company outside the country, India. Let's say there is a US FinTech. They want to bring capital into the country. Today, there is a Foreign Exchange Management Act. There are FDI limitations, foreign direct investments limitations, and so on and so forth. But within this zone, what happens is you do not have those limitations. The capital can come in and can go out freely, right? So that's a big blessing for foreign fintechs, foreign firms who want to bring in capital, set up operations, do things, and also take out the profits.
All in their, for example, in US dollars, if they're coming
Absolutely.
from the US, British pounds, whatever, euros.
Correct. Correct. So you get to open a bank account here, which is dollar denominated, US dollar denominated. You cannot do business in Indian rupees. Of course, you can use Indian rupees for administrative overheads, but the business is done in freely convertible foreign currency. That's the US dollars and so on and so forth. So now that is the context here. So now when you talk about cross-border, it makes perfect sense for anybody who's outside the country to use this as the landing pad to come into the country, because there's a huge market I'm talking about, access to the country, and also you can bring in this kind of a facility. So what we are doing is we thought, let's build bridges with regulators around the world so that it also gives the regulatory comfort, a regulatory handholding for these firms who want to come in from a different jurisdiction, and also for the Indian fintechs who want to go to those markets. So that's how was the idea which we created in, building these fintech bridges, trying to do cross-border related stuff. I'm sure you'd have heard about the famous UPI linkages with Singapore's PayNow, right? So these are all huge, I would say, jumps of revolution here, which you're talking about, because the cost of cross-border payments, which is flagged by the UN SDG, which everybody is looking at. These are things which can really make it atomic in its nature, the speed and the kind of efficiency you're bringing into the supply chain. It's just simply mind-boggling. So I think it's a connected world at the end of it, as they call it, as a global village. So looking at these cross-border linkages is absolutely essential for us to kind of build on the strength which we already built.
Yeah, Joseph, before we close, I want to reiterate a couple of points that you mentioned, and please feel free to add to that. To me, the fact that this new regulatory body is converging the existing regulators, it is very unified. It is offering in a zone that is special, in an economic area that makes a lot of sense to build international bridges. And it is the best ideal way for foreigners to come into this huge market with great potential, and especially for those that not only are pure fintechs, as you said, but techfins, and my heart goes more to green tech financing and enabling the green transition of the global south, which is extremely important, and we can talk about it and think about it as having huge impact with the real meaning, and these tech fins and fintechs can play a major role. So please add what I have not mentioned to all this gift situation that we are covering today.
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well. And if I have to add, probably what I should say is the way we are talking about green and sustainable, fintechs and areas, sustainable finance today. I believe 10, 15 years back, when I talked about climate, we never brought in regulators or central banks or the BFSI into the play. It was more of researchers and scientists. But 10, 15 years on now, we know we need a lot of capital to kind of really do something substantial here. In a similar way, I believe 5 to 7 years from now, the space economy and the lunar economy will grow and will need a lot of capital. So what we have done is we have also accommodated space techs under our fintech entity framework. And we also have got into an MOU with our Department of Space, because we believe the convergence of fintech happens. Space tech, green tech, agri-tech, fintech, it's going to be a convergence angle. So if the geospatial intelligence from a space tech is being used by an agri-tech to give a better loan to a farmer or better crop insurance, I think we are talking about financial instruments there through loan and insurance, right? So I believe this convergence can be a game changer going forward. So that's something which we are kind of focusing as well, to see how the convergence can multiply the effect.
I think, Joseph, that the interconnectedness of these innovations that you mentioned and the opportunities that you mentioned is underestimated and not talked enough about. And I am so delighted to hear that a regulator is even thinking about this versus, putting in silos. Okay, here are the fintechs, and then, there's another a regulator for different areas. This is brilliant. It brings the concept of a unified regulator to another level. Thank you so much, Joseph, for this very enlightening conversation about what you're doing now and what are the vision for the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Effie. Really appreciate it.